of note. To press OK here. And then some discussion on our public meeting for December when we release our action plan. Update on Governor Scott's executive order if there's time, as well as last opportunity for action plan drafting. Lori and Eric and Hillary, I'm looking at you guys because I feel like you haven't had a chance yet to weigh in on that. So we've been working hard on it, but wanted to give you opportunity before we get a rough draft to have with our meetings. We've scheduled a meeting with the Secretary Moore, and the Ag Secretary as well. So looking forward to that. With that, I will let's just do a quick round of introductions so Maddie knows who we all are, and I'll just point as I see people on the screen. Lori, you first.
Hi, Maddie. Great to see you again. Thanks for coming. I'm Lori Fisher, a CAC representative from Williston.
And Eric?
Yeah, Eric Clifford, sort of ex-dairy farmer from Starksboro.
Andrew?
Andrew Milliken, a citizen member from Charlotte, formerly worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for many years.
Brack?
Hey, Maddie, citizens member from Burlington, formerly at the Rubenstein School at UVM.
Allison?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm a member from Jericho is where I live, but I work for Lake Champlain Sea Grant.
And Hillary?
Hi, Hillary Solomon, member from Middletown Springs, and also work with Poultney Meadowy Natural Resources Conservation District.
And Mary and Sarah, if you guys are available.
Hello, I'm Mary. I work for DEC as the Lake Champlain Basin Program Project Specialist. And so I work on the projects funded through LCBP at the state, and I also help support the CAC.
Sarah, are you there?
Hi there. Yep, sorry I can't turn my camera on right now, but Sarah Coleman from the Clean Water Initiative Program. I work with Mary, and I'm glad to be here tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so before I pass it over to Maddie, I will just say, as far as I don't think there's anyone on from the public, so I think we can pass on public comments. But chair's update, I did attend both a steering committee meeting and an executive committee meeting since we met last, and I would say one update is that I did make the request for Vermont and New York CAC to replace Katie Darr's position, and I'm hoping that that is something that I heard back from Eric and Sarita from New Epic, and it sounds like that's something that they're going to prioritize working on, so that's good. And then our policy or our research requests were submitted to the TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee, and those were reviewed and voted on in the steering committee meeting. And I think a lot of what we provided was helpful to the TAC. And I think I was going to ask Eric to just send us what came out of that as far as like the priorities, because not everything we provided was agreed on to move forward, but some of it was for sure. So I can share that. Any questions about chair stuff before we transition? And lastly, I would love to vote if we could have a motion to approve the September 20th meeting summary that Mary provided. That would be great. I know some of you
And to approve.
Thank you. And a second?
I can second, Andrew.
Any discussion about the meeting summary from September 20th? All right, all those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand.
Aye.
Motion approved.
And I'm abstaining since I wasn't there.
I'm abstaining because I was out of the country.
Thank you. All right, take it away, Maddie. Thanks for joining us.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you for doing the introductions. It's nice to learn a little bit about you all and see those of you who I've met again. Also, Breck, I will always hasten to share a proud Rubenstein graduate. So once a Rube, always a Rube. Nice to meet you all. Thank you for having me. I do have some slides to share. I think I told Mary via email that I would keep the slides brief. And then of course I made like 28. So I'll try to go through them relatively quickly. Do I have share power, or could you give it to me, Mary, or whoever is in charge?
Yeah, I should be able to give it to you. Or maybe you might have to do it, Karina.
I did it.
Looks like that worked. Yeah, I've got it now.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So I am really happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me to share a bit of an update on current policy issues facing Vermont's farming community. I will also say this is like not a complete summary of every issue that the farming community is dealing with. I am definitely better positioned to speak to some things than others, and I'm focusing a little bit more on in this presentation on the issues that NOFA is particularly engaged in. So I'm sure there are things that I will leave out, but I'm going to do my best to share what I know. Just a little bit about us for anybody who's not familiar with NOFA. We are a member-driven and member-led nonprofit working to advance organic farming practices. And we really see our work at the intersection of people, land, and justice. We were founded in Putney, Vermont in 1971, and we're one of the oldest organic farming associations in the country. We are now ripe 54 years of age. And we have about just over 2,400 member households around the state. We see, like I said, our work at the intersection of, human and planetary health. And we really believe as an organization that when we get food and farming right, we get a lot of other things right. So this beautiful slide, I always want to include in every presentation I give because it really highlights all of the benefits that thriving farms bring to our communities beyond just the food and fiber that they might sell in the marketplace. So we know that farms support biodiversity, soil health, natural resources, civic engagement, local food security. You can see all of the things here that we value about farms and that I think a lot of Vermonters value as well, including yourself, I'm sure. The vision that we tend together is that Vermont is home to thriving farms and agriculturally rooted communities that support the long-term well-being of the earth and all its people. And as you all may know, farmers are facing a lot of overlapping crises right now that really threaten the future of our farms and our state as a whole while they are trying to feed their communities and care for the land in a way that benefits us all. Some of these challenges are increasing land costs, corporate consolidation, the economic reality of small scale farming, which is mostly what we have here in Vermont, and overlapping climate crises, flooding, heat, drought, disease, and pest pressure, which we're all familiar with. To layer on top of that, there are a series of challenges that the current federal political climate are putting on top of all of that, including defunding of some farmer support programs, shortened or unclear timelines on core programs. That's of course exacerbated by the current federal government shutdown, a massive reduction in already understaffed federal agencies. USDA here in Vermont has lost an estimated 26% of its staff. I'm sure Hillary in particular is all too familiar with that reality. Defunding of SNAP and other supports that were investments and currently still are investments in, both limited income Vermonters and farm viability. We've seen a lot of divestment in climate resilience, and in particular, divestment from historically marginalized communities in particular. Increased pressure and budget and attacks from ICE and Border Patrol are putting our farm worker community and the broader immigrant community at risk. That's of great concern to us. And then finally, there's a growing question around legal challenges to all of that. So that's the landscape that we're existing in. And I'll go a little bit more into, I know you all will be familiar with this, the climate crisis and extreme weather that we've been facing over the last couple of years. Excuse me, my visitor here. In 2023 and 2024, we know that farmers faced catastrophic flooding around the state, in addition to a late spring freeze in May of 2023 that was incredibly damaging to our fruit growers in particular. Following on that this year, as we've just been discussing while hopping on the call, extreme drought conditions are really, really challenging, particularly livestock and dairy farmers around the state. Flooding in 2023 alone cost Vermont farmers an estimated $44.7 million. And here's a couple of reminders of what that looked like. This big old number here is the total damage and loss reported by Vermont farms in 2023 and 2024 in their applications to the Business Emergency Gap Assistance Program, or BGAP. Oh, and I did want to highlight this slide for you all because I was appreciating the emphasis in your previous, I think your action plan document that Mary had shared with me of these financial impacts to farmers from the flooding. And I just want to note that this number is much bigger than the number that you had included in that document, which I think was a reflection of the survey data that the Agency of Ag put out immediately following each flooding event. But this number actually reflects what is, I think, a much more complete picture of the loss that farmers have been experiencing, because it's taken from applications to that fund where folks reported their losses a little bit further along. Cost of land and housing is becoming a significant pinch point for farmers as well. And increasingly, speculative investment in farmland is really challenging the affordability of farmland in our state. So, hold on just a second. I have to manage my kiddos. 1 second.
No problem.
The joys of post workday meeting times. Sorry about that interruption. Where was I? So this I should also say, I don't really have a slide particularly going into the threats to farmland overall, but it is really a significant part of the challenge that farmers are facing, particularly folks who are trying to get into farming. We often talk about our work at NOFA Vermont, and I think of, a metric of success if we're doing our work well is that we have more farmers on the land, and that's becoming increasingly difficult because of the impact of all of these overlapping factors around the cost of land and speculative investment and corporate consolidation and climate reality. Just a little bit of data I'd love to share with you around the economic trends for small scale farming in Vermont. This is showing, as you can see, the chart on the left, average net farm income by size of farm in 2022 is showing that really farms below that 140 or so acre threshold are generally not showing a profit, whereas larger farms tend to be more profitable. And that's a challenge for our state in particular, because our farms are, many more of our farms are on that left side of this continuum and are smaller in acreage. And then on the right here, percentage of farms reporting net gains and net losses. You can see since the late 90s, that trend has really been going in the wrong direction, where we have a higher percentage of farms reporting net losses than net gains. The good news is Vermont can make policy choices that will better support farmers and the health of our landscape and our communities in light of all of these challenges. So I will pivot to talk about some of that work. In case folks aren't familiar, I want to just introduce the Food Security Roadmap to 2035. NOFA is a core partner on this effort. whose goal is to make sure that all Vermonters have the food they need and want by 2035. So that's in just 10 short years. It's an ambitious effort, and it really serves as an umbrella that encompasses a lot of the other policy priorities that I'm going to share with you. So I wanted to tee this up a little bit and give you some background on it in case you're not familiar. The food security roadmap came out of a combination of things, including the experience during COVID that I think many of us will remember, where grocery store shelves were bare because of our brittle supply chains, and Vermont's farmers really stepped up in a big way to make sure that our communities had the food that they needed during that time. And were put under a lot of stress because they had to step up in that way. That, in combination with the climate stress that our farms have been facing over the last several years, really pointed toward the need for the state to have a plan in place to make sure that everyone has access to the food they need. And so the food security roadmap came out of a group of organizations and hundreds of Vermonters coming together to make a plan to address those challenges. And you can see here, this is a little bit of the roadmap to how we got to the roadmap, where the legislature directed the Ag and Food Systems, the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund and the Farm to Plate Network to develop a food security plan. That request was also included in the Climate Action Plan and the Governor's Commission on the Future of Agriculture. The group went through this big statewide community input process and did interviews with over 600 Vermonters, and that led to the roadmap goals, which we have now, that are these three. So communities have the tools to support food security, Vermont farms have the resources to be resilient, and government ensures food security for all in Vermont. Those are the three pillars of the roadmap. Our role at NOFA as one of the core partners in the roadmap is really centering the role of farmers and farm viability in keeping our communities fed. This section here, the A strategies really highlight the need for farms to have the resources that they require to be resilient. And under that strategy is S60, which is a bill that we've been leading on in partnership with all of the farming organizations that you see here at the bottom right corner of this slide. It's called the Farm Security Fund, and it is a bill that is in the House Appropriations Committee right now, having passed the Senate unanimously this past session and passed out of the House Agriculture Committee. And this bill would set up a new program under the Agency of Agriculture that would provide rapid response relief payments to farmers who are impacted by climate disasters or other types of extreme weather. And you can see here, we're partnered on this effort with the Center for an Agricultural Economy in Hardwick, the Farm Bureau, the Connecticut River Farmers Watershed Alliance, Rural Vermont, the Intervale Center, Vermont Veg and Berry Growers Association, and a growing coalition of farmer organizations. We know that farmers need reliable, rapidly available funding to be able to recover from climate emergencies. We've learned that over the past few years of climate disasters, and we know that Vermont farmers are absolutely critical to Vermont's future, making sure that our landscape can be healthy and that people have the food that they need. And this is one of the important steps we can take to get there. Just a little bit more detail on the policy in case y'all are interested. I'm happy to answer questions about this afterward too. We, with this coalition of partners that I mentioned, got together last summer after the second round of flooding to really talk about getting together to understand what happened over the last couple of years of flooding in the farming community, and being able to pivot from a place of just harm mitigation and responding directly through, philanthropic fundraising to support farmers, to talking about what would be a structural support system that we could put in place here at the state level that would actually make sure that farmers have what they need in the future, now that we can see these events are going to keep happening. So some of the principles that our organizations collectively decided on early on when we started working on this policy proposal is that this program needed to be simple to apply for, provide immediate payment, be flexible and proportional to meet farmers' needs, and be permanently and predictably funded over time, and that it would be administered by the agency in collaboration with a review board made up of farmers and farmer organizations. and that farmers would be reimbursed for up to 50% of uninsured or otherwise uncovered losses up to a certain cap. So those are our goals with this policy. And then beyond that, I wanted to zoom out a little bit more and give a preview of some of the issues that are coming up in agriculture that might come forward in the 2026 legislative session. So many of these you'll see are directly related to the impacts of federal funding cuts and policy changes, and we know that those will, play out in various ways here in Vermont, some of which we don't quite understand yet. But I'll give you a little bit of a preview of those. So the first being how SNAP cuts will increase hunger and harm farmers. We as an organization focused on farmers and food security are really concerned about the SNAP cuts passed in the federal reconciliation bill in July. We know that those cuts will increase food insecurity in our state, but they also harm farmers who accept SNAP at farm stands and farmers markets around the state. We know that SNAP is an economic multiplier, so that all of those SNAP dollars that are spent locally at farmers markets and farm stands go farther in the local economy, and that SNAP helps support thriving local communities, and it improves farm viability by in part through programs like Crop Cash and Crop Cash Plus, which NOFA Vermont operates. That's a program where people can take their SNAP benefits to a farmer's market and double those benefits when they spend those benefits on local food. Secondly, we're really concerned about increased threats to immigrants, including the farm worker community here in Vermont. And we stand in solidarity with farm workers and all immigrants being unjustly targeted by ICE and Border Patrol under the current administration and previous administrations, frankly. And so this one, we are not sure exactly what this will look like with some exceptions, but we are working as an organization to collaborate with partners like ACLU and Migrant Justice, Bridges to Health, and the Asylum Assistance Project to find ways to improve protections for immigrant neighbors and ensure access to critical resources like food and healthcare. You all may know that some of the federal policy changes enacted in the federal reconciliation bill took effect on October 1st, and that included removing access to SNAP benefits for some of our immigrant neighbors. So that's a major concern for us. We also know that Bridges to Health, which is a program that connects immigrants in Vermont with healthcare resources, that has been a lifeline for over 400 immigrant families in the last decade, is at risk of having to close its doors because of a funding cliff that they're facing in January. So we've been working on that issue too, to make sure that farm workers and other immigrants in our communities can continue to access healthcare in ways that work for them. Finally, the expiration of the healthcare tax credits that are at the center of the current federal shutdown. We know that the expiration of those advanced premium tax credits will disproportionately impact farmers. This chart here shows, this is from Kaiser. They have a list of occupations that will be disproportionately impacted by the expiration of those tax credits because those folks are buying insurance on the healthcare exchange. So healthcare is not historically an area where NOFA Vermont has worked, but we have heard the call loud and clear from our membership that they're really concerned about the expiration of these tax credits and how they'll impact farmers and farm workers who are buying insurance on the exchange. So we've been doing so far some organizing focused on the federal congressional delegation to try to get this issue addressed, as have many millions of people around the country, but this might end up playing out to some degree on the state level as well. Lastly, I don't know if anyone's familiar with this. This is a bit of an emergent issue. There was a Vermont Supreme Court ruling on May 30th of this year that may really change the role of municipalities in regulating farming. And so this is an excerpt from a sign-on letter that's being circulated by our partners at Rural Vermont, who are really concerned about the implications of municipalities having more authority to regulate farms than they have previously, that might overlap more with the jurisdiction of the Agency of Agriculture. So this is, like I said, kind of an emergent issue. And there's, language being developed, I think, by the Agency of Ag to try to address this. This will very likely come up in the upcoming legislative session, and we will be involved in this if and when it does. And then finally, I want to share, we know that you all, care about the health of the lake and the health of our natural resources. And as an organization working to support organic farmers, we know that strategies to improve the health of the land have to go hand in hand with strategies to improve the viability of small farms and food security for everyone who live here. And that's all. And if you want to ask me any questions, I'm here for that as well.
Thank you, Maddie. And excited your presentation was awesome. There's definitely some slides that I want to reference in the future, so I'd love to, if you can share that out with the group or with Mary later.
For sure, I can do that.
Questions for Maddie?
I'll start one. Maddie, what is the essential difference between the Food Security Fund and the existing GAP program? Is it largely that the GAP program is a loan program and the Security Fund is intended to be an immediate payout?
Well, the BGAP program, I think, is what you're referring to.
Right.
So the BGAP program actually has also been a grant program. So folks receiving those payments haven't been expected to pay them back. A lot of what we did in creating the Farm Security Fund policy was talk to folks at the Agency of Agriculture who helped administer the BGAP program, and also farmers who received those payments, to find out like what worked well, what didn't work as well. Part of the challenge with BGAP is that it originated and still exists as a program under the Commerce Agency. So it wasn't designed with farmers' particular needs in mind. And that was some feedback that we heard directly from folks within the Agency of Ag who said, when they originally got the guidance from ACCD on how the BGAP program should be administered, there were lots of things that just weren't analogous in like what types of losses would be covered, for example, that made sense for the farming community. One of the other things that we really heard about BGAP was that it provided really meaningful financial relief to farmers. Farmers were incredibly grateful for that support on the part of the state, and it took a long time to get those payments. It took 6, 9 months, I think up to a year in some cases, for people to actually get paid, which is a really long time if you have a farm business that has paid out all of its upfront costs and then lost the opportunity to regain any of that revenue because of the flooding. So quicker turnaround time was really important to the farmers that we spoke to and to everybody in our coalition. And so we've actually written into the bill that the agency and the review board would have 15 days upon receiving an application to review it and approve or deny, and then 15 days to get the money out to folks. So just that quicker turnaround time was really important.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
Hillary, go ahead.
I apologize. This might just be a little bit in the weeds, Maddie, but as you're talking about the fund, I wondered, is that something that could be supported through multiple types of funding, like not just Vermont state funds, but through private donations and other things, or sort of what's the plan for that fund overall?
Yeah, that's such a good question. It is designed as a special fund. So if you read the actual bill language, it's called the Farm and Forestry Operations Security Special Fund, which is a real mouthful to try to say. But the special fund designation in state statute means that it can receive money from the state's general fund, it can receive philanthropic money, and it can receive federal money. So it's really flexible in the types of money that can be put into the fund, which I think is a huge benefit. Yeah, and I will say, just as a slight addendum to that, we operate the Farmer Emergency Fund at NOFA, and we have since like 1997. We've had that fund that is one of the ways that philanthropic donations can support farmers in recovering from extreme weather and lots of other kinds of catastrophes. We raised, I think, just over $2 million in 2023 through the Farmer Emergency Fund that went back out directly to farms. And in 2024, when flooding happened, on the 1-year anniversary, we saw a really precipitous drop in the amount that came into that fund, and just how people were willing and able to show up the second year of flooding. So that's part of the call for the Farm Security Fund too, is that we can't just rely on, as I'm sure you all know, on philanthropy to fill that gap. So we're trying to highlight the role of the state, but know that the state can't shoulder it alone. Oh, I should have shared this with you all, and I actually thought about including a slide on this point, but the Farm Security Fund is included as, maybe some of you serve on the Climate Action Council, I can't remember, but it is included as a priority recommendation in the latest update of the Climate Action Plan, as well as in the resilience strategy that was released by the governor and the treasurer's office.
That's really helpful. Lori.
Thanks, Maddie, for a great presentation and for the incredible work that you and NOFA do. It's really important and highly valued and absolutely critical at this stage. But I'm wondering, given the CAC's focus, which is on Lake Champlain health and water quality, and the fact that you've seen our action plan too, and we're finalizing another one for this upcoming session, if you have any specific recommendations for that plan, or ways that, to the extent that we overlap in our concerns, understanding we're a volunteer body, that we can help advance things mutually during the upcoming legislative session.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think now is a time where I'm starting to see, and I've been working for NOFA in this capacity for almost 11 years now. And I think for that whole time, I've really been longing to see a lot more clear overlap in the priorities of the environmental and the farming community, who I think are often sort of pitted against each other in ways that are very unproductive, and I actually don't think reflect most Vermonters' values at all. And I've been frustrated by that a lot in the past. I'm starting to see, especially through some of these statewide plans, like a real recognition of the ways that agricultural priorities and environmental priorities do overlap, and like proactive steps that we can take and policies we can implement that will, meet both communities' needs and our collective needs. So I'm really heartened by that. And it's, it's imperfect, but I feel like there's been a lot of progress in that area. In terms of the Lake Champlain Basin in particular, I mean, one thing that I would say I still am really longing for, and that NOFA would really like to be a part of, is just a better and more participatory statewide or even regional land use planning process. I think there is some work underway in that respect right now, but just being more planful about the ways that we can address both, our housing crisis and issues around farmland access and affordability at the same time feels really critical. So just like for folks that are on the ground doing work and living in your communities, I think a role that maybe you all could play is just trying to bring some of these issues to your community and find ways that they can get directly engaged. I have found that a lot of the times, like state-run processes, and it's not to denigrate anyone's work, but they're not necessarily always designed in ways that really welcome the general public to come and understand what's at stake, the questions that are being asked, and how they can play a role in like shaping the future or shaping that issue. So I wonder if there's a role for the CIC in bridging that gap, so to speak, because it's really important that more people have a seat at these tables.
Thank you.
Recognizing that you all are volunteers already doing a lot.
Betty, I'll ask a question, I guess, about your comment about this emerging issue of municipal zoning and so forth. What is the greatest concern there?
So basically what came up in that Supreme Court ruling was that I think previously the interpretation has been that farms, anything that's regulated under the required agricultural practices or the RAPs that regulate farms that are administered by the Agency of Agriculture, anything under the RAPs was under the jurisdiction of the Agency of Ag. The Supreme Court ruling really determined that that the RAPs are narrowly focused on water quality, and so only the aspects of farming that are directly tied to water quality are limited to the Agency of Ag's jurisdiction, which opens up a lot of other ground for municipalities to be able to step in and regulate farming. I think, you know, if you talk to different farming organizations, there would be different types of concerns about that potential shift. I would say from NOFA's perspective, again, we want more farmers farming. We want more people able to farm the land that they have access to. And in some cases, because of the affordability of land, that's really limited. And it might mean some farming is happening in otherwise, you know, residential areas. And obviously there's limitations to, you know, that might not work in some cases, right? But we want to maintain the ability for farming to happen, you know, in as many different scenarios that are acceptable, you know, that work for everyone as possible. From a food security and food sovereignty perspective, we don't want to see the number of places in our state that farming can happen reduced in any significant way, because we need to produce more food. We need more people to be able to produce food, not less, basically.
Okay, thanks.
Related to that a little bit, two things came up. One, I think I read this in maybe it was the New York Times flood article, that some farmers in Vermont have transitioned to growing rice. Is that like is that something that you're aware of? Like, is that a big movement that's happening? And wondering if that.
I mean, Hillary might be able to speak to that as much or more than I can. I feel like I've heard a couple of those stories, but I don't know that it's a significant enough trend that it's really worth talking about. I mean, I will just say from my personal point of view, I live in Cambridge and I live on the Lamoille River, which is one of the rivers that has flooded really significantly in the last couple of years and now is bone dry and has been for most of this summer. We have a hay field between us and the river that's been hayed by 3 different farmers since we've lived here for 10 years, because I think the quality, you know, has been hit or miss because of precipitation patterns. And I remember early on thinking, like, what could this land be best used for if not for hay? And could it be, you know, farmed for something like rice? I don't know. There might be areas of the state where that makes a lot of sense if there's like really consistent flooding patterns. I would just speak to like my little area here. It doesn't feel like it's quite consistent enough that would work. But I don't know. I'm curious actually, like what Hillary or Eric thinks about that.
I could speak to that a little bit. So maybe 5 years ago, there was a movement locally to start growing some local grains. And mostly that was, I guess, down in the Meadowy Valley at one point, there had been quite a bit of wheat grown, which we don't see anymore. So there was a local bread maker who bought a small mill so that they could mill the local grains. But then with everything that's happened in the last, you know, the couple years after that, that has stopped. We were supporting, we had purchased a couple of cultivators so they could do like organic weeding at different stages of the growth of the grains. But that's pretty much all on hold right now, just because of the economics of farming right now. It was, you know, too small, too risky, maybe didn't have the payout. It was sort of a dream that people wanted to get back into, but it wasn't rice, it was wheat, and then we're seeing a little more soybeans down here.
Eric, do you have any Any other knowledge of that?
The only one that I know of with rice, in the basically Ferrisburg area, they're using ducks to help propagate the rice, and he's been at it for a number of years, so I think that would be the go-to source for information for rice in Vermont. So
Interesting.
I will say though, it's like that's the kind of innovation that would be more possible if farms weren't in the unstable and just like generally precarious financial position that they are so frequently in. This, I think, like our farm economy right now, even for you know, dairy farms or larger farms who have maybe more safety net in the way of crop insurance or like DMC, dairy margin coverage. Even those farms, I think, are finding themselves in a precarious enough position that like ag innovation like that is probably not happening as much as it could be.
One last question for you, Maddie, that I had was, is there anyone else that you think that we should be reaching out to related to ag issues and legislative priorities related to Lake Champlain particularly?
I mean, I'm curious if y'all have talked to the Champlain Valley Farmers Coalition. They would certainly come to mind. I'm trying to think about who else in that area. I mean, it would be great for you to hear from some farmers directly. You know, I can speak to these issues from a policy and like state house kind of perspective, but I think hearing directly from farmers is always excellent education for me, at least. And I could think of some folks. I'm sure Eric and maybe Hillary have plenty of those connections already, but if you want recommendations for organic producers in particular, I could probably put you in touch.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Maddie? Thank you so much. Go back to tending family.
Thank you all so much for your time. Thank you for your
Thanks,
patience
Maddie.
with my little.
That was a
interrupters.
great slideshow.
Great presentation.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We liked
I will
his
send it on
commercial.
to you. Great. Nice to see you all. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Bye,
Maddie.
Maddie.
Okay, following our agenda, public meeting location discussion. So we had, and I think this conversation may have started actually in one of our study halls where we were working on the action plan, where we were so what I can say as an update is that we have secured, we decided on a panel for our public meeting versus like the traditional presentation format. And we invited Treasurer Pichek, Secretary Moore, and Matt Vaughn, Dr. Matt Vaughn, to be on the panel. So Denise and I, and we can circulate it with you, we're gonna work, Denise was gonna moderate the panel, and I'll be the MC for the night. So that's our December meeting, which the date is locked in for those panelists. And the date is December 8th. But we do not have a location. So we had tried, the Coach Barn had been an idea. And that unfortunately the Coach Barn is not available during that time. So last year we had it at the at the town of Shelburne's public facility, and the year before we had it at the sailing center. So just wanting to nail down a location for this one, and wanted to see if folks had ideas of locations or if we should go back to one of the locations we've been at before.
Are there any other towns that have good meeting spaces with a lot of capacity? Like the Shelburne, that was a good spot.
It did, it worked well.
It's
I do
like a
like
new building. Yeah.
Yeah. I do like the idea of like moving it a little bit so that people from other areas on the lake can get there, but also keeping it, relatively central for folks.
How many people would we expect? And the ones I've been to, it's been like maybe 20. Is that so? 20 or 30?
And
Yeah.
higher.
Although I feel like the sailing center, it was more than that.
The sailing center was also, I think, was it earlier in the year? I can't remember which one was earlier. And I think in December you've got a plan on weather, and you said it's December 9th?
It's the Monday of our normally scheduled meeting.
Okay.
So December
It was
8th.
snowing a lot last year. I just remembered.
Yeah.
I feel like
Well,
the sailing center too, it'd been a few years, or maybe it was one of the first rollouts, or at least in a while, and so there was some momentum there.
mhm.
That was a great event.
Yeah, I like that venue, and I think it could be easy to go back there. I haven't reached out to them. I'd be happy to do that. But I just didn't know if there were other areas. Like I'm wondering if like Colchester has a location. I'm sure they like the high school maybe in Colchester, or
Are you thinking you prefer to have it in a shoreline community for Lake Champlain? Or you could think St. Albans or the island communities, or if you want to emphasize more the watershed, you could go inland.
right. I'm open to any and all. I guess I want to go where the most people will come.
I was kind of wondering about the island communities too. I know it would be a far drive, but would people go there? Does anybody think? I don't know if anybody's from that
I
area.
think frankly, December is going to be a
A tough
challenge.
time.
I think that's going to affect turnout, just for a host of reasons, at that time, people are already pretty busy. So will there be, and unfortunately, I will be away then. So I'm just wondering, will there be an online option? I know we had that last year. I think that'll be important, for engagement. And if you're talking about drawing a lot of people, well, Burlington has the advantage of being the population center. So and it's going to be more likely that you get a bigger turnout there just because of the population base you're drawing from.
It's a good point.
I feel like we were
Yeah.
throwing out like Main Street Landing last year too.
Oh yeah.
It's a possible location.
Yeah, I also agree. I think the time of year, having it kind of in somewhere in that sort of Burlington, Shelburne area where it's fairly easy to get to for a lot of people, you'll get more people there. Yeah, Main Street Landing's a nice venue. I've hosted meetings there. It's worked out really well.
Could we get into hula? And I also wonder about, could we reach out to Vermont Public? And would they let us use one of their meeting spaces and even cover it?
Oh wow.
I think there was a reporter there last year.
There was
There
a
was.
reporter there.
Yeah.
I haven't been
Yeah,
to
I
their
mean,
meeting spaces.
Well, I guess just to step back, I think thank you for your work pulling the panel together. I think that should be a real good draw, and I'm really interested to see what they have to say in that kind of setting. I think it'll be a good topic.
With a panel of heavyweights like this, Piacek and Moore and Vaughn, it does occur to me that maybe Vermont Public would be kind of interested in that. And their facilities are just magnificent.
What are their facilities?
They have several meeting rooms. I don't know. I think they have meeting rooms that I know that they have a studio come meeting room that would seat 50 50 to 100 people, depending, and they can divide it off into smaller spaces.
Okay.
We were just there the other night. It's a very nice facility.
And for the panel format, how are we envisioning that to work? Are there going to be questions that you said you're going to be a moderator that
Denise
you'll be
is
asking
gonna
me?
moderate, and
Oh,
we
okay.
were gonna draft. I was gonna MC the evening, like do
Mhm.
opening introduction to the action plan, and then Denise was excited to moderate that. I think she'll do a good job.
Mhm.
But yeah, we were gonna draft up questions, and this was sort of built on our conversation of just like all of these plans that are coming out with the resilience implementation plan and the redo of the climate action plan, and also tying it to Lake Champlain and the science that's going on the lake. So I'm excited about the panel idea, and yeah, I want to draw a good crowd. So if it makes sense to others, I'll look into all of those venues that were mentioned sort of centrally, maybe Vermont Public first, and then Hula, Main Street Landing, and Sailing Center as other options.
Any of the schools in the area too, South Burlington. Of course, Burlington's not going to be ready yet, but South Burlington, Colchester.
Good idea.
South Burlington has a pretty good municipal space. They have a new town building.
South Burlington does? Okay.
Yeah.
Like somehow the town buildings feel more accessible than the schools, but I don't know if that's just personal bias.
I haven't been in the, is that in the library, Allison? Yeah.
Yeah, there was they have like auditorium style seating, which I don't know if that's what we're interested in, but that's the room that I've been in.
Yeah. Allison, do you know about parking near there? Because I've only been there walking, and it's always been under construction, so there's been no parking. So that's, just one thing I wonder about.
I was at a meeting there just during the work day and was able to park in the lot that I think is designated for
Great. So they
the
have
library.
They have a lot there. Okay.
They do, yeah. And I'm not sure if maybe at some parts of the day or some areas it's paid to park. That's possible. I didn't when I was there, but there's a lot of construction happening, and driving through there the other day was really a mess. So, I don't know if that'll still be happening in December, but
yeah. Another thing in terms of drawing an audience, and I don't know, Breck, maybe you'd have an idea if it's too late to do something like this, but doing it at a university or on a college campus and pitching it to youth, trying to coordinate with certain professors so students would come to promote that kind of community engagement, and also partnering with like Allison with Sea Grant promoting it. I know we've done that before with LCC, and getting people other organizations to try and encourage their membership and their coalitions to participate. Might be an option.
We could reach out to the deans of a couple of the colleges that would be most likely to be interested, and see if they'd be interested in sponsoring, helping us to get a space in the data center or one of the other buildings.
That's a good idea.
So we seem like we have a long list for you, Karina. Do you want us to, should we try and narrow it down so you're not do you need help on any of this, or what?
I would love the help, and Mary's been a great help. Mary's not here right now, but she was here, and Sarah's listening. Yes. Let's try and narrow it down. Well, what I would like to do is take our narrowed down list to Denise, who definitely should can't be here tonight because she had a planning commission meeting. Unfortunately,
Mhm.
like this month and next month, we're meeting the third Monday versus the second. So that's why Denise isn't joining us. But I'd love to take a narrow down list to Denise and get her input, and then I can work with Mary and Denise to act on it if that works. Unless people have like direct connections with the university, like I don't even know where to start with the universities. So that would be another thing.
I mean, I can reach out to Peter Newman, who's the dean at the Rubenstein School, and just ask if that was something that he would consider. And I can't. There've been changes, at least in the ag school and in civil engineering. I could reach out to them, and I could talk with Peter about who those people are and see if he'd be willing to reach out to them. If you want me to do that.
Yeah, well, I guess first my question is, what is our priority? Would we prefer to have it at a college campus type location, or is Vermont Public a preferred option? Because I know a little bit about the Davis Center space, but I don't know. That's kind of where it stops for me.
A downside of that option is that that's going to be a really busy time on the campus. There'll be a lot of people demanding that space. So it might be difficult to get it, but I mean, won't know if you don't ask, you know. So
I think it would be interesting in the college setting just to see what the attendance could be from the colleges. We haven't really tried it that way. In my mind, it might be kind of interesting to quote, give it a try. And like we said, we have a panel that certainly is going to draw, and to pack the room with college students isn't necessarily bad.
Mhm.
We might need more food.
Oh
you
no.
know, those pizza will do it.
Organizing catering is a whole nother piece to this, which we haven't done before. But yes, pizza, we can do pizza.
If it's at the Davis Center, UVM, they probably have right of first refusal for food. So I don't think you can just bring in whatever food you want.
They do have preferred vendors.
Yeah.
You know, I heard what Eric is saying, and I agree with it, but I also am thinking that, again, given the firepower of the panel that we're talking about, you know, if we could get Vermont Public interested in it, I think that could reach a much broader audience potentially.
I think it's worth, reaching out to them. I think probably we need a few irons in the fire. So I think, and I think it doesn't hurt either way to broach these things because, with Vermont Public, it's hopefully if they say no, laying the groundwork for something in the future or other options that we might do in the future. And the same thing, with the university. I don't know how soon you're going to be able to reach somebody, Karina, but.
So here's another random thought. You know, I know we typically do this in the evening to allow people the maximum amount of time to get here. And I don't know how far ahead they plan, but I mean, what if you were to make this a Vermont edition sort of show, you know, that we pitched it as something. I mean, you'd really have to make sure that Mike and Julie and Matt were okay with that, because that put in a whole different pressure on it.
That would be wonderful.
That would then, you wouldn't have people in the room as much, but you'd be reaching a much wider audience.
Yeah.
That's a cool idea. Yeah, so what I can say is that we did have the panel save the time frame of December 8th from 5 to 7,
Okay.
but that doesn't mean we can't go back and ask them if there's flexibility there.
Mhm.
And I would want that Vermont edition to not just be about the panel, but be about our action plan too.
Right.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Structuring that would be important. But I love that idea.
Yeah, and then you'd have to take call-ins, right? From regarding the action
There
plan.
would be the public participation.
Yeah, exactly. It would be wonderful. And again, it's just, if that can't happen this year, it's good to broach that because if they're open to it, I would try and get, whatever you can do to avoid it being a flat out no, but maybe we have a long runway for next year or something in the future too.
I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I'm guessing they probably have their Vermont editions planned out
Yeah.
I would think so, yeah.
through.
But even just
December.
finding out what's the lead time and, broaching
Right.
it that we're really trying to, partner with entities to gain broader participation, and the lake and the basin are such a, critical focal point for their broad audience too. We thought there's a good nexus here, and if what we're initially offering doesn't work, we'd be very amenable to something else in the future. Yeah.
Well, maybe concurrently, Rec, if you could reach out about the college campus idea, I can work on the Vermont edition, Vermont Public. And then depending on what we find out, then we have some great backup options with the Sailing Center and Main Street Landing and potentially Hula or South Burlington.
Yeah, I can reach out to Peter and see whether that's something he'd
Okay. That would be great. I am not sure that I will get to it tomorrow, but I can definitely get to it Wednesday, if not tomorrow. So
it's December 8th, 5 to 7.
correct.
I wonder about just reaching out to Michaela Frack directly and saying, hey, what is your lead time for a story? We'd like to pitch an idea to you. And if she then says, well, it's about 9 months, that answers that question.
Right.
She says, well, we're kind of running a couple of months ahead, maybe the 8th of December isn't terrible.
It does seem like they sometimes pivot when there's a topic that's like forefront. So happy to do that.
And, I think Piacheck alone would probably be a pretty good draw for them.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you guys for the brainstorm. Okay. I'm just checking in here. Okay, that's Mary's message. What's next on our agenda? Oh, the executive order. So I'm not sure if everyone has heard by now, but in late September, our governor issued an executive order promoting housing. And in that executive order, there was a lot of language related to wetlands in developed areas and wetlands modification in developed areas to streamline the construction process for housing. And that caused a lot of confusion with the Vermont Wetlands Program because they did not know this was coming. So they didn't have any idea that the executive order was going to be released, and they didn't know how to provide guidance because the language in the executive order was confusing as far as like what it defined as development areas, including using language that said like all developable soils, which you know, in some cases is a very broad description of where wetland rules would apply or wouldn't related to housing. So does anyone, like, generally, does anyone have any questions about that? What I can say now is that, like, the wetlands program has issued a statement saying that the current wetland rules continue to apply and that nothing will change from those rules until rulemaking starts, which they're saying will start up in October. So it's already October 20th and it hasn't started up yet, but that is what the wetlands program is saying. And the changes that will apply once this rulemaking happens will only happen in certain areas. And there's actually an online map that you can go to that defines those areas. And I think those areas are consistent with what's defined as designated growth areas under Act 250. And then, like, the other thing I can say is just from wearing my Vermont Natural Resources Council hat and the other environmental NGOs who work on wetlands issues, there's concern that, like, that what the executive order states is illegal. So there's, like, and that's more broadly, and it's like, we recognize that housing is really important, development is important, and wetlands are important. So we need to really look into this to make sure we're doing this the best way we can. So that's what I can say as an update. Brett, go ahead.
Yeah, Karina, I'm just curious. So maybe I should know more about this executive order than I do. So there are areas designated for development, right? And
Yeah.
those areas might contain wetlands in them.
Correct.
Does the executive order say something as blunt as that anything that's in the developed area can be developed, period? Or is it more that, okay, yes, this is the designated development area, but other environmental rules and regulations still prevail? So, you know, is that executive order going so far as to say soils that we would not have developed before because they're wetland soils are now eligible to be developed?
It does say that.
Okay, that's not good.
Yeah. But I guess it's interpretation. I can read you exactly what it says. I have it pulled up, but designated areas such as downtowns, village centers, new town centers, growth centers, neighborhood development areas, and opportunity zones, areas served by public sewer or with soils that are adequate for wastewater disposal or extending to the terminus of the area served by public sewer or water services fall under that wetlands modification. So it's pretty and what it also says is that class 2 wetlands, we would only use those that are currently mapped or those that are defined on the map as class 2 wetlands. And no state wetland permits would be required for impact. So you would have to have a permit for class 2 wetlands that are on the map in those areas. But if they're not mapped, but they are a wetland, because a lot of the wetlands are not mapped, then those unmapped wetlands could be developable. Lori.
So do we have a sense of, do we have like a percentage of how many of the wetlands are unmapped? That's part of the first question. The other is, I'm wondering, we'll be planning a meeting with the governor, and it sounds like this is something that we should be bird dogging and have potentially a position on as the CAC and be prepared to talk about it. I mean, from my perspective, it seems pretty important. Well, I know you're, you have a lot of wetlands expertise, Karina, and I'm sure, I know VNRC is a lead voice in that coalition letter that went out, but, I'm just wondering if you can, where you're, obviously you have a perspective from VNRC, but as chair of the CAC, what are your thoughts on that in terms of us, following up on this and continuing to, and potentially raising it when we're meeting with the governor and leadership in A&R?
I definitely think we should. I think it's critical, and I think it's like super frustrating that wasn't something that was brought to us to collaboratively connect on, and it was just like handed down in an executive order because it's more confusing for everyone as far as how to interpret it and what is, what's legal about it and what's not, what may or may not be. So I think, and I think that's like I think everyone recognizes that this is an issue. Eric, you brought it up at our annual retreat, like wetlands and developed areas have become an issue. But those are also areas that are like providing huge wetland function to those urban areas because they're acting as islands. So I think that it's really important, and we certainly need to stay on top of it. As far as the question, as far as do you have a sense of how many wetlands are unmapped? We don't, but like what the wetlands program can say is like how many wetlands, currently the whole state is in a remapping process, and the mapping increased wetlands by a certain percentage, which I don't have on hand, but I think in some cases it didn't necessarily double them, but it may be like a third, like Otter Creek watershed, for example. And that, I think that work will happen faster to get those wetlands that are undergoing mapping to just be mapped sooner. So that will afford them more protection, and it's great that the wetlands program is doing that at the same time, just because we don't know what we don't have mapped until we map it. So yeah, and I think that it like there's definitely a real issue there as far as development and growth, and I think it will also play into the Act 250 conversation that's going to move forward as well.
So do we know what Secretary Moore's stance is on this?
We don't.
I mean, I'm reading on the DEC site that in developing interim guidance, A&R Secretary Moore determined the most prudent path forward is to fully implement the wetlands-related provisions of the EO through amendment to the Vermont wetlands rules.
So that is, are you reading that on the wetlands website? So I think that's
I am reading that on just the DEC. There is a special page on Executive Order 0625. I can
okay.
Put it in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't talked directly to Secretary Moore, nor has VNRC or the CAC. We have a meeting planned to talk with her, and we can certainly bring it up at that meeting. But I think the wetlands program felt very just sideswiped by this because they were not prepared for it. And they're the ones that are getting phone calls like, how do we deal with this? So I think that was frustrating.
Yeah, it's kind of disingenuous to say just because it wasn't on a map, it's fair game now, you know.
Right.
What does that have to do with the new maps? Because, you know, Winooski and Otter basins have new mapping, other basins do not. Is this just from this point forward whatever's on the maps, or does it completely disregard that they're in the process of remapping?
I think that
Areas.
will be figured out in rulemaking, that nuance.
That seems like a waste of taxpayer money to pay for these remapped wetlands when they won't even be using those maps. I don't.
Yeah, I think the hope by the wetlands program is that the language will require the newest mapping.
Mhm.
But then to have mapping be such a finite, like a stagnant thing, because it's really wetlands change. That's why we have to wetlands need to be delineated every 5 years, and often the map is like an indicator, but then you hire a consultant to go out and delineate that boundary, and it's the delineation that holds like federal weight. Like you have to have that done to protect the wetland at the federal level and at the state level in the past, according to the Vermont wetland rules and the Clean Water Act. So how that impacts rulemaking, we have yet to see, I guess.
Well, thanks for the info. I have to unfortunately head out to a different meeting. But
Thank you for joining.
we'll
And-
see y'all soon.
Yes. Bye, Allison.
Thanks, Allison.
Did you guys get there was an update from our wetlands state person today from Zapata, and she had talked about how it's like, there's certain lands that come under this jurisdiction, and it was maybe 6% of, I wasn't sure if it was 6% of lands or 6% of wetlands that might be affected. But I don't know if other folks got anything today from anybody else in wetlands.
No, that's what I have too.
Okay.
That she says the wetland regulation changes will apply only in designated residential growth areas. So they're narrowing down the language in the executive order with this guidance, which make up no more than 6% of the land in Vermont. And then you can click on this online map viewer to see if your area is included.
Can you circulate that?
Yep, I can. Or Hillary, if you have access to it sooner. I'm looking at a PDF.
And Karina, can you also share, if as CAC members are interested, the coalition letter that went out regarding concern about the executive order?
Yes.
If CAC members, I have a copy of it, but I
Yep.
didn't know if.
Yes. I will share both of those. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
doing that while I'm in this meeting, but I will share everything afterward.
Great.
If that's okay. And then, okay, so it's 6:20. Are we good with moving on to our action plan? Because I want to leave time for that. Because there are certain folks who have not had it, may not have had a chance. Lori, when did you get back?
Just last week.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just looked at it. I'm still
did.
wading through, but and I perused it rather than did a deep dive, but on first blush looked good. I think I used Mary's link, and it seemed so the last comments on it were from late September. I hope I was looking at the right thing.
That's probably true.
Okay.
We've had quite a few lunch meetings. I'm putting it in the chat right now, where we go through and accept comments just to keep, because it was getting just so
Yeah, okay.
So I think the ones that are in here from September 15th are sort of some like just outstanding questions.
Okay.
So maybe we should start with that. I would say we did not reinvent the wheel with this action plan. We sort of took what we had from last year generally and tried to make it more succinct and or perhaps a bit more intentional in certain areas. And then we have, so the first part is just some like different ways that the Venn diagram will be displayed, some of the language changes in the Venn diagram. And then under 2026 priorities, would it be helpful if I shared my screen for folks, or does everyone have it to look at?
I've got it.
Okay.
Got it.
So I'm just looking at our, maybe we'll just address some of these comments and see if we can get anywhere with them and if people have other things. So interest in asking the secretaries, are any positions at risk going to be cut in state agencies? Is funding secure? Where might budget shortfalls occur? They may want to say that this is a sensitive topic. So I think these are just notes more related to our conversations with the secretaries. What are we asking forward? Oh, this is priorities. To have state funding increased or something else? Want to make sure we don't go backwards. And then where does CAC want to see funding prioritized? Importance of co-benefits raises priority. Yeah, I don't see, do you guys see anything action related there other than to make sure we bring that up with our meetings with the secretary? I'm trying to remember.
I mean, it doesn't seem like those comments would suggest we change what we have.
Right.
More about how we might use it and things we might bring up in the meetings.
Which I think that is, yeah, I think that's the goal of those meetings, is really to share what we have and really ask them how we can help them. The next comment under advanced flood mitigation and climate adaptation, this looks like a new one from Allison. It's the second paragraph, last sentence. What exactly does this mean? Reconnect rivers with the floodplain, enhance connectivity by removing dams. I'm not sure if the layperson would understand what just reconnect rivers means. This is funny because I think this was a longer sentence and we we modified it and now it's going back to more descriptive. So that's a little bit of a ping pong. The state
So
must,
don't we want it to reference reconnecting to floodplains?
yes, I think we do. The state must continue to support funding and research to reconnect rivers.
Two floodplains, just add two
Yeah.
floodplains within the Lake Champlain watershed.
Well, and their floodplains, because we want to reconnect rivers themselves, right? We want to, through dam removals and
Yes.
culvert upgrades,
Oh.
and so forth.
I think that works.
I don't know, Andrew.
Oh, thank
My
you.
thought is that the notion, I mean, most people are, I guess, are going to think that a river that's going over a dam is still connected. You know, they're not thinking of it in the fisheries sense. You know, oh, the water, I mean, there's water above the dam, there's water below the dam, the river's connected. You know, it hasn't been disconnected. So that's a little bit of jargon that we understand, but I'm not sure that the public understands.
Right. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of connectivity, lateral, longitudinal.
Right.
So it's hard to say all that and explain it all.
I'm gonna take her out one afternoon. I think she said Sunday afternoon.
We could say the state must continue to support funding and research to restore natural stream process within the Lake Champlain watershed. Or something to restore stream process and
You know, I agree, Karina, but it's to restore natural stream processes that benefit communities,
yeah.
right? And now you can start building in things like flood control and removal of dams to, you can bring the details in discussion, but it's not just about, hey, we ought to let rivers be natural just so that they're natural. It's that they're natural so that they benefit communities.
Yeah, habitats and communities, or ecosystems and communities, or something like that.
Let's say ecosystems rather than habitat. I like that better from Andrew.
Yeah.
Processes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Good comment, Allison. Yes, I think the Healthy Homes, my comment about the Healthy Homes initiative, that was something Mary was going to check on, I haven't checked on that, but it is something we can also ask Secretary Moore in our meeting with her.
I was
Unless someone
wondering,
else knows.
I was just gonna say, I was wondering about that too. It's nestled in with septic topics, but the name of it isn't inherently about septic, which I think is why we like it. So I don't know. There's, again, I'm sure you're trying to take words out, not add words, but just making sure that's obvious to people, or we present it during our testimony.
Wait, clarify that, Hillary?
Sorry, I'm not looking at it now because I'm looking at you guys, but the Healthy Homes Grant, that sentence that was highlighted, like
Yeah.
that Healthy Homes Grant is nestled in septic topics because that's what it helps support. But it isn't, like, the title of that grant doesn't make it obvious that it's helps support local failing septic. I don't know if that's,
Like we could say, like, are you suggesting we say Healthy Homes Septic Initiative or Healthy Homes Initiative to repair failed septic systems?
I don't know. I guess I just wasn't sure it was clear, although it is definitely located with that
Mhm.
topic.
Right.
So I don't have the solution. I just didn't know if we should add a little, parenthetical note or something, or if it seems obvious to people. I guess I was just asking if it seems obvious to other people.
We could provide a live link to the initiative if that was something that was still applicable. Sometimes that's helpful versus adding more words, but I'm open to either. Maybe I'll just add another comment.
While you're doing that, I'm wondering, given the presentation that we just heard, whether the previous paragraph could potentially reference sort of the farmer viability part of things, or not. Maybe that's not really necessary. But sustainable agriculture.
Where are we? Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm up one paragraph. Increased
Yep.
investments in sustainable agriculture, and then I was just trying to think: is there anything different or more we would say based on what we just heard about the state of farms and farmers in Vermont? Maybe not. I mean, maybe it's not. It's beyond what we need to talk about, but.
No, I think it's a good point, and I was thinking about it when Maddie was talking. So it's good to just cross-check.
I was thinking about that too, and maybe similar to my comment, like maybe we're starting to take down some notes of things we want to make sure we cover in the present legislative presentations, like the
Yeah,
backup information.
Right.
I agree. I think
that's
maybe
good.
fleshing that out too, before the November meeting would be helpful if Mary could take a crack at that, and doing some of those write-ups would be useful because it speaks to kind of the intent of these more succinct statements that we're making. And we want to make sure that we're on the same page.
Right.
You know, because certainly Maddie laid out a lot of key recommendations and some concerns regarding, you know, the federal cutbacks and the pressures now on farmers. And, you know, when we're giving the presentations to the legislature, it's an opportunity to speak, to provide more specifics. We want to make sure that we're all comfortable with those specifics too.
On the paragraph that we were on before, invest in public infrastructure, I think we need to say invest in public and private infrastructure, because at least half that paragraph has to do with septic systems and education about septic systems. And
It's a good point.
Support for sustainable practices on developed land, working and developed lands, new development, and so forth. So it's not just about public infrastructure.
Where is, sorry, I was just typing the other note, so I'm catching up.
Just in the bolded part there of invest in public infrastructure, just invest in public and private.
Yes, agreed. And that's what the Healthy Homes Initiative is, private infrastructure. Good catch. I was just gonna say one more thing here. Mary to start drafting questions for secretary in advance of next meeting. Do we have another meeting before we have our secretary meetings? That is something I can't remember. Our next CAC meeting is the 17th.
Oh, it's the 17th of November?
Yeah. So it's pushed back a week again. And I think we have speakers lined up, and that was part of the reason is Mary had reached out to speakers in September, and they weren't available for this one, but they were available for that one. So that, and she had just given the wrong date. So
Well, I mean, the answer to your question is we meet with Julie next week, right? So
yeah,
it's, you know.
so we're gonna have to have some questions before then. Yeah, we meet with both secretaries next week. Okay. Well, that's something that Mary and I can work on and try and circulate.
Karina, you're kind of taking notes on these talking points that we'll be building out. So I met with a couple of legislators last week, and the AIS topic came up. It was about inland lakes. And I mentioned the greeter programs and how they're pretty underfunded, so that the greeters are not always out there during times like fishing tournaments and times when there's heavy boat traffic. And the legislators in question, like maybe weren't aware of that and thought that there was pretty good greeter coverage, maybe just depending on a particularly robust greeter program in the area that they lived. But that might be good to pull some of that information, because it seems like a very small percentage of lakes actually have greeter programs. And then of those ones that have greeter programs, the coverage is pretty limited. So I'm happy to help pull that information together if that's helpful. And Lori probably knows a lot about this too.
That would be really helpful, Hillary. And are some of the folks here able to attend both of those meetings next week with Secretary Moore and Secretary Tibbetts?
Can you note when they are again? I don't know.
Yes, Secretary Moore is 11 to 12 on October 29th. In person. I don't know if there's a remote option with that meeting.
And where are we meeting?
We
National Life, right?
Let's see if it's we're meeting in the Catamount room at National Life.
I have a conflicting event on that day and time, unfortunately.
Okay.
But I
Karina,
can meet with Tibbetts, and I can be in person if that's desirable on the Thursday.
I think in person is always more desirable, but I do think that if you can't join remotely, so that's great.
Yeah, I'll be there Thursday.
Okay, great.
So sorry, I missed so there's one on the 30th too?
Yes. Sorry, not Thursday. Yes, Thursday. The 30th from 1 to 2.
I don't have the calendar invite for that. So I don't know if I just didn't click it or if that hasn't gone out, if it went out to people that said yes.
Well, I can see that all of you were invited, but
okay, so maybe I just didn't click on it.
For some reason, for both meetings, it only shows that I've accepted, and in this case, Terry Smith has accepted, but that's the only two that have accepted. So I can have Mary send a reminder, but please block out your calendar for 1 to 1:45 on Thursday, the 30th. And that is in the Agency of Ag building on the 2nd floor conference room. But there is also Teams link. I'm not sure that I can resend the invite to you guys. And then sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say I can make the meeting with Julie. I can't make the ag meeting.
Okay.
And I thought I had replied, so I don't know whether something happened there, but.
And it may just be because I can't see because I didn't send the invite out or something. Scheduling, not sure how that works.
Feel like too, like, if there's coverage on the meeting and I don't have to drive the 2 hours, especially like with Julie where there's not a link, I'm happy to not drive the 2 hours. But if we need that coverage, need another body, like, I guess I would love to just have somebody let me know that, like, yes, you should go, or we're good.
And Hillary, I do see a Teams link for both meetings.
Okay, I just need to go find that and click on it. Was it from Mary?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, you're saying even for the one that we said maybe Nick didn't have it for Julie, there still might be a Teams link.
Teams link for both meetings.
And I think the invite for the meeting with Secretary Moore is from Secretary Moore.
Till you're dead. I'll never stop.
I like
Wait, I wanted to hear the rest of that.
I know.
Sorry,
Good
a little bit of first grader reading graphic novel.
So good. Okay, so I will make a point of resending those, or having Mary or Secretary Moore resend those meeting links. But there is a Teams link. I think most importantly, just block your calendar now for those time periods, and then we'll get you the link.
I just found the one from Julie. I just put maybe, so it must show as like not attending on
Not
your
attending.
version.
Okay, good. And if you are coming in person, I guess let me or Mary know, so that we just have a count of who is actually coming in person.
Right.
And I hope that we'll have some type of like draft document of questions, but also like if like Hillary, if you want to start the AIS Google Doc and share that, then we can work off of that. So I think it'll just be who has the capacity to get to that sooner. And I think Mary has a lot of other work right now as well. So definitely shared effort here. Okay, with that, let's get back. So we have 10 minutes left here, and I'm just looking to see if there are any other comments. Looks like Hillary got a good catch that we can just accept. And that's all. Cool. So I think the next step with this action plan, and I don't know what it will look like. It may just look like this when we bring it to Secretary Moore and Secretary Tibbetts, which is fine. And at the same time, I think that we will share it with Elizabeth from Lake Champlain Basin Program, who does the formatting, and just see what she can, how she can turn it around and when, in case it can look prettier. But I think the goal is for it still to be a working document during those meetings, so that we can get feedback from them.
I think we should anticipate Julie might want to talk about our public meeting and how she can talk about the resilience implementation strategy within the context of what our goals are. So I think maybe we should be prepared to have that discussion.
Yes. So what I might do too, if maybe I'll try and have another lunchtime focus group before those meetings, if it works for folks next week, or even later this week, at least for Mary and Denise and I, and whoever's available to jump online and try and get an outline of thoughts. It would be good to sort of have talking points related to that panel. So I'll work on that as well. I'm excited. I think we have a great action plan that we've worked really hard on, and I'm excited for our rollout. And I think that we should drop off early if people are good, unless there's any other questions or things we want to bring up. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I will second.
Thank you, Hillary. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm hungry.
Enjoy the rest of your Monday, and we'll be in touch. Thank you guys so much for your help.
Thank you,
Bye,
Thank you,
Karina.
Karina.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.